Hi everyone, thank you for joining today. I am Brittany Tibbin, Account Director here at Spindustry. Today's webinar in our e-commerce series is looking at the data, on-site search, and product taxonomy introduction. Our speakers today are Michael Bird, CEO of Spindustry, and Allison Ellis-Hoxing, e-commerce strategist. If you have any questions, please type them in the questions feature, and we'll try to answer these at the end of the webinar. You'll be receiving an email with the recorded webinar and the slide deck shortly. And without further ado, I'll let Michael go ahead and get started.
Thanks, Brittany, and thanks for joining us today. So I wanted to pull up the agenda first and just cover what we're going to hit on today. We're going to quickly define e-commerce. We're going to go over the e-commerce landscape and some statistics that might help you. We're going to talk about the data, how you get it, and how you integrate with other systems to get even more data. We're going to talk about product taxonomy, quality of search, pricing, scalability and maintenance, and all the things that have to happen after you launch your e-commerce site. And since those are all big topics, we're going to try to give you some actions you can take in the next 30 days to get started. And with that, let's dive in. So if you've been on any of our webinars before, we like to give an overview about e-commerce so we're all on the same page, so we'll do that quickly. If this is interesting to you, we have other webinars that you can find on spindustry.com that go into all of this sort of business side of e-commerce in a lot more depth. But defining e-commerce is simply selling services or items online. E-business is kind of those activities that surround e-commerce and aren't really shopping, but are maybe customer service oriented, things that you have to have but aren't proper shopping. And lots of times when we're talking about e-commerce and what we're talking about today, we're talking about enterprise level e-commerce, which is, a variety of combinations add up to call it enterprise e-commerce, but they include complex product, ones that need configurations. If you're supporting 50,000 plus products or 50,000 plus SKUs on your site, if you have a complex buying process that might include an elongated timeline, a request for quote, different pricing tiers for your customers, and if your e-commerce system is talking to other systems, integrated systems like ERP, point of sale systems, et cetera. Any combination of those adds up to really being what we call enterprise e-commerce, as opposed to if you're doing a simple e-commerce store with 20 products, you're not going to run into some of the same problems we're going to get into and describe today. Looking at the current e-commerce landscape, because again, we're going to talk about some hard work today and some things that have to be done to support a big e-commerce site. And it's hard work, but there's also big opportunity on the other side of that. 25% of the world's population buys online. Almost 14% of retail sales worldwide are online. It's going to be 18% by 2021. But there's opportunity. Half of American small businesses don't have a website. And we always get asked this, what percent of my visitors are going to convert into buyers? And it's about 3% across the board. Some other quick statistics. Again, we're going to talk about a lot of different things today. You want to look at a lot of data. You want to look at Google Analytics. You can find things like that 69% of shopping carts are abandoned, and there's things you can do to fix that. One is to not surprise people with shipping costs and other surprises late in the checkout process. Mobile e-commerce accounts for 67% of digital sales in 2019. So again, even if you have an e-commerce site up today and it's not mobile friendly, you'll want to work on that. And younger people are shopping online as well, but anywhere up to seniors shop as much as 2.5 hours a week. And let's talk a little bit about B2B statistics. B2B e-commerce will hit 1.8 trillion by 2023. 5.9% of all sales for manufacturers in B2B is done by e-commerce, and 17% of all B2B sales will be done in e-commerce by 2023. So it's growing, but yet there's still lots of opportunity to get into the game. And I really like this slide. We hear a lot about objections to e-commerce, and what you see on this slide is that a lot of those objections are internal. It's not getting buy-in from your other top executives. It's internal sales and reps kind of being resistant to change. Only 13% said that customer reluctance to buying online is the reason not to do it. That means for 87%, they feel like their customers will buy online. You need to deal with all those internal objections, of course, but if 87% believe their customers will buy online, your customers will buy online, it's certainly something to think about. And if you're not taking advantage of e-commerce, you'll certainly want to. So now that we've gotten you excited about that, we need to talk about that thing I mentioned earlier, all the work that goes into getting an e-commerce site set up. This is definitely going to be the geekiest of webinars we do talking about e-commerce, but again, data and all that it takes to support search is very important to the process. So let's dive in. Okay, so where is that data that we're talking about? What is it? And is it coming from other systems? Let's dive into all that. So what data do you need? We'll give some examples here in a bit, but lots of times when we're starting with a client talking about their e-commerce system, all they have is a product name, a product number, and a price about their product. Maybe they know what manufacturer created that product if they're a reseller. But oftentimes data, especially that's coming from older systems, just simply doesn't have the more marketing type data you might expect with descriptions and categories and all those types of things. So we have to figure out where we're going to get that from. Sometimes that data does exist, but it just exists in other systems. Maybe you have it in other Excel spreadsheets, in catalogs that you've produced in the past that are in Word documents or other kind of publishing type files. Maybe that data is coming from third parties, especially if you resell other people's products. It's certainly worth asking. That said, when you talk to those third parties, what you're going to find is some reluctance for them to give you data. You're also going to find that data coming in different formats that you have to figure out how to deal with, but it's certainly worth investigating. And what improvements can you make internally to get that data? So when you do that initial audit and figure out what you have, maybe you can't fix, again, the failure to collect data over the last 50 years, but you can look at processes and start to think about how, as we add new products to the mix, can we get data stored in some kind of central repository so that we have the data surrounding products as we go forward. We also need to figure out, who can create that data and how to tackle it. Maybe you look at top selling products, maybe you look at certain categories you want to grow and you tackle a piece of those. We just spent a couple of days last week with clients looking at this type of data. They had as many as 30,000 products. We had to figure out how to categorize. And it was a lot of looking at keywords within the product name that could assign it to a category, who the manufacturer was, and if that manufacturer tied directly to certain categories. Lots of investigation, lots of looking at third-party sites that they would relate to. It's just a process to go through and attach to all that kind of data. And certainly it's something you can put some manpower at. You can just simply put, with good instructions, marketing professionals, interns you might hire, et cetera, with guidance from strategy and marketing professionals. They just have to sort of start that block and tackle process and start adding data to, again, maybe your top selling products or certain categories so you can get what you needed there. So let's talk about a little bit left of that of where this data might come from if you're integrating with other systems. So again, if you have a front-end e-commerce system, it may or may not talk to your back-end ERP system or your point-of-sale system. You'll hear people talk about systems not being open. What that means is the system cannot be communicated electronically. So we use words like API and data services and web services, things like that, to mean, can we reach out from an e-commerce system to an older data system and get it to give us pricing information, inventory information, product additions, product deletions on a regular basis, whether that's real-time, hourly, weekly, daily, whatever it might be. But older versions of ERP systems and even newer versions of some ERP systems simply are closed systems and won't perform that kind of communication. So certainly during the analysis process heading into e-commerce, that's something you're going to want to look at, is what are the capabilities of your ERP system, and if they're not there, could an upgrade allow that kind of communication to happen? And whether you talk to that system or not, lots of times the systems, as I mentioned a minute ago, in those ERP systems is out of date or incomplete for some reason, hasn't been updated, it wasn't seen as a marketing system, so some of that data wasn't kept there. Or there's limitations in older mainframe or AS400 systems. You only have 40 characters to store data. We can always tell when product names are in all caps and they're 40 characters long and they cut off in the middle of a word, that data is coming from older systems. It's a real telltale thing we can see. And it's worth mentioning this kind of integration could be a big one-time event up front where you're getting a lot of product information from various sources, importing it into your e-commerce system, and then maintaining it in the e-commerce system itself. Or you could have ongoing connections to these backend systems, like I said earlier, to get pricing and inventory updates or product additions and deletions. And then you have to understand what all it takes to have those connections happening, as I said, anywhere from real time to weekly to monthly, et cetera. So a lot to look into. And now let's think about, you have all this data about these different products. How do you categorize them in some way on the website that makes sense and support search ultimately? So let's talk about what product taxonomy is, and I'll introduce Allison to talk through that.
Good morning. We're going to talk about the product taxonomy. Product taxonomy is used to show that hierarchy or that relationship between your categories and your products. So it's that searchable, browsable category tree. You need to make sure that information is well organized and intuitive to your customers. So you need to think about it from the perspective of how are they going to be looking for products on your site? Are they looking through categories? Are they looking for products based on how it's used? Are they looking for products based on specific brands? Those are all ways that you can categorize your products and allow people to drill down. So
just wanted to show an example. This is, sort of that categories, an example of categories on a site that might show some of that taxonomy starting to come together.
Right. Why is this important? We're going to talk about quality of search a little bit later in the presentation, but for this part of the conversation, about 50% of your customers are going to come to the site and they're going to try to drill down. They're going to use your navigation to find the products that they're looking for. So having that really well organized category tree is really important. They're going to click on a category, drill down to a subcategory, and eventually start to get to products. On top of that, they're going to be using the attributes or subcategories on the left rail of the search screens to further refine that information. So for example, you'll have a category and then a subcategory, then you'll be using product attributes. Those are descriptors for the product. For example, in the slide you're looking at right now, you've got hose barb size, you've got color, price, brand. Those are all attributes of a product, which will help your website, your customers on your website, further refine the information they're looking for to get to the right products. So it's really, really important that that information is well thought through and it's complete. It's also important to remember that you're going to have some products on your site that are going to be sort of your miscellaneous products. It's tempting to put those in an other category or a miscellaneous category. But unlike a catalog, it's really easy on the website to identify the various categories that product might belong to and assign the product to multiple categories. So it's easy to find in relationship to the other products that people are searching for on your site.
Great. So, you mentioned a second ago that 50% or so of people are going to drill down through that navigation, drill down through that categorization or taxonomy. But a huge amount of people are trained to search or go to that search bar first. So let's talk about what quality of search is and how that applies to your website. So one distinction I want to make up front is this is different than search engine optimization. So search engine optimization and ranking well in Google and Bing and other search engines is about getting people to your site in the first place. There's a lot of work there. We can do a whole other webinar on search engine optimization. We're talking about on-site search where someone has arrived at your site. Again, they've maybe started with the navigation, drilled down, didn't find what they were looking for, or they're Google trained and started with search on the website. And so if they did that, you want to make sure that the information is behind the site to support a search working well. And what makes that on-site search work well is a combination of three factors: relevance, performance, and the customer experience that results. And I'll let Allison go through those as well as how those are accomplished.
All right. So consider the relevance, the performance, and the customer experience as overlapping circles. You need all three combined to have the best customer experience, the best overall quality of search. So relevance is the right terms, the right information, the right metadata around your products. So making sure that if there are layman's terms and industry terms, both applicable to a product, both are available, whether it's through search word fields in the back end or whether it's through your product name, your product category, and your product attributes. So making sure that information is there. The second is performance, really looking at the search engine that's driving your site search, making sure it's indexed regularly, you're leveraging caching, things that make the site bring back those search results quickly. And the last is the customer experience. It's looking at how is that information presented back to your customer? Are they able to further refine? If they're not able to get that result right away, is there a way for them to do an advanced search? So looking at how all three of those things play together to give your customers the best search experience. A really important thing to think through is linguistic tools. That's using common misspellings. Again, that hidden search word field. So making sure that if I type in Kleenex that I know that I'm looking for tissues, or I'm typing in Q-tips, I'm looking for cotton swabs. Those types of things really make a robust search result for your customers. Then on top of that, once you've got those things in place, you need to constantly refine and review your search to make sure it's giving the best results to the customers. You need to make sure your search or your e-commerce platform has search word reporting. So looking at how often people are searching keywords, how many results they're getting back, the relevance of those results. Also looking at Google Analytics or whatever analytics tools you have to see where people are dropping off in the search process. If they're dropping off at the search results, you can kind of glean from that that maybe that search result is not returning good information back to the customer. Or if they're getting through that and getting to the product detail page, is that detail page not really relevant to the search that they made? So looking at all of that information and refining as you go. Search is one of those things that never really ends. You're always going to be refining and fine-tuning your search to give the best experience to your customers.
Yep, great. So let's illustrate that through an illustration about a certain product that we have a little bit of data about, but we need more about to do all the to be effective with all things we just talked about. So let's look at a sample product here, and this is very typical. Again, as we said way at the start of this discussion, that we get information like this about one product. So we have a product name here, a 310 clutch, we have a part number and a product price. So this is enough information so that if somebody perhaps came to your site and typed the word clutch into a search, that it would find it. But it's not the best. You think we can do better, Allison?
I think we can do better.
We can. So let's try it. So here we've added a little bit of more information about this product. So you have your same 310 clutch, but we've added the manufacturer name. Now again, if you are the manufacturer name is going to be the same for all your products, but it's still valuable to get into the data. If you're a reseller of any sort, any kind of distributor, dealer, et cetera, where you're going to have products from multiple manufacturers, it's very key to have this information. Lots of people will look for products by manufacturer. The manufacturer number, also important. You're going to have your own part number, perhaps, for products. And we'll have clients swear up and down that, oh, you know, the customers wouldn't know the manufacturer number. But inevitably, as Allison said, when we're tracking the search and looking at what people type in, there you're going to see a combination, in this case, of somebody typing in 112002 and the 310T14 number. You're going to see both being searched. We have a product description that is good for search engine optimization, as well as for the person using the site as well to learn more about the product, and in some cases can be searched, the product price, and then an image for that product. So we've got more information about the product, and as you can imagine, if somebody types in a variety of additional elements, they're now going to find a match. But as we talked about earlier, search is the only way people get to products. They drill down through the categories and the subcategories which make up the product taxonomy on the site. So in this case, we've categorized this product as a clutch with a subcategory of power clutch. So now someone could not only search, but could drill down through that hierarchy to get to the product. But looking at search in particular, now if somebody types in 310 or Big Red Company, both will match. 310 probably brings back fewer products than Big Red Company, depending on the amount of products that that company has, but either one will get you a result set from which you can find the product you're looking for. But now, let's say if a customer types in USA 820 or the 310 8-inch, we wonder if those are going to be a match. Well, as a human being, you're going to look at that and you're going to look back at this description on the previous page and assume that this might be a match. But this is where you get into a trap of a lot of information buried in text fields or long descriptions, etc. The computer doesn't know that 820 is a number between 810 and 850. It might, again, it would match on 810 or 850, but it's not going to match on 820, 830, 840, 841, whatever. It doesn't know that those numbers are between that. So you have to find a different way to communicate that information to the search engine on your site. And that's where we get into some of the attributing that Allison talked about earlier. So in this case, we've gone to this product and again, the 10,000 other products that we have, and we've looked for features about those products we can identify. So in this case, for this clutch, we said there's 4 different sizes, 6-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch, 12-inch, and that this product, this part fits 4 different tractor models, and we associated this part with those different models. So now we've created a whole lot of additional possibilities for people finding this product. So let's talk through that. So a search for USA 820 will now match, assuming your keyword search is looking at the fits information and what tractors this part fits on. It would match that at the bottom there. A search for 310 or clutch will get the customer to this clutch and other products. Your e-commerce visitor here can see via the attribute filtering down the side that we showed in that screenshot earlier, checkboxes for size with the options 6, 8, 10, 12 they can pick, further filtering down the result set. And as they click on each of these options on the side, again, we like to get people to a large result set of products and then let them click on those attributes to drill down to more and more specific items. And they're going to get down to 2 or 3 that they see and they like. They can click on that final product, go to the detail page and learn even more about it. One kind of sidebar conversation I'd have about this is that when looking at search result sets and looking at products themselves, you want to use a lot of merchandising tools you might have in your e-commerce package to provide the user with alternative products. So if you're selling a particular clutch, maybe there's a whole kit that goes around that clutch. So via different connections we've made with products and keywords on the back end, we can make sure that when they search for that clutch, the kit as well as the clutch shows up in the result set, as well as having related products on the product detail page, et cetera. So you're going to get people to the right stuff via search, but using additional merchandising tools to show them related products by what others have bought, by what others have liked, just things that you've assigned from one product to another, you can give them even more information. So hopefully you can see how with all this more, when we have this information and this information about a product, it's a lot more than where we started here, and the results via search and navigation will be better accordingly. So let's talk about product pricing for a minute. Again, now you've got 10,000 products, whatever it is, into your e-commerce system, but now you've got to figure out how to price them for the customers, and that can be, sort of complicated. So let's talk about a couple of things about how you think about your pricing, and then Allison's go through some different pricing models. So thinking about pricing, you as an organization are probably coming at this from a couple of different spots. So either you have pricing models you've used offline and you're trying as best you can to just translate those online as part of your e-commerce system, or for one reason or another, this is a fairly new business for you online and you're starting from scratch and you can go with whatever direction you'd like from a pricing perspective. Both of those have their challenges, of course. But let's talk about how people price offline today and some of the challenges there in bringing that model online. So one we've seen a lot is geographic-based pricing, where catalogs are printed for customers in different regions and the pricing is different. And this may have made sense in earlier times when there were physical limitations to getting things to different markets. Different markets could bear different pricing. You had different other kinds of economic factors affecting what you wanted to charge in different regions. But unfortunately, or fortunately today, the world is a much smaller place in a lot of ways, and the transparency need is higher, and people are going to find out what you're charging in other regions more easily. So think real hard if you want to carry that geographic pricing forward online. Another thing we've seen offline is different customer levels. Certainly people have established tiers of customers based on what they've purchased in the past, simply whether you like them or not better than the other, whatever it might be. We've seen all kinds of different things with pricing tiers around customer levels, which is okay, and those can certainly translate online. And then Allison and I's favorite when we're working with new clients is the no pattern of pricing. So we've seen a lot of people or a lot of organizations that have pricing that has matured over a 30-year, 50-year period, and maybe it made sense at the start, but pricing and new products have been added and the margin is different on different products. And then when they went from one customer tier to another, it just wasn't a simple multiplication of 5% less or 10% less. They just priced tier A and tier B completely differently. And while that's certainly possible to do offline and certainly possible to carry online, you can imagine the problems that creates. So when you're thinking about going online and creating pricing tiers, how would you approach that differently? Well, there's a couple of things to think about. Again, one is that transparency I talked about. Online, it's best if you can show a price and everyone can see it. Obviously, if they log in and see different prices, that's okay. But you need to be prepared to explain your pricing structure and assume that people are going to perhaps create multiple accounts, perhaps have friends that have accounts. They're going to discover the pricing tiers. So make it make sense and make it be rewarding and make it be based on, again, what they've purchased, so that your high volume customers get better pricing. That makes sense, and you can be open and transparent about that. But just think a lot about that transparency. And again, your consistent pricing tiers is just, if you're going to have tiers, the more they can be 5% plus or minus, 10% plus or minus, et cetera, as opposed to the no pattern pricing, it's going to be easier to maintain. And back to that data I was talking about earlier, if you have to get pricing updates from third-party systems, and especially if that's any kind of manual process, you don't want to have to be updating onesie, twosie, 10,000 products with different pricing. If you want to go in and say, change all these products to 7% discount instead of 5%, that's easy to do programmatically. Onesie, twosie pricing changes and reviewing all of those can be a big problem. So think about consistent pricing tiers and transparency as you're looking at moving from an offline pricing model to online. And as Allison goes into these pricing models next, just consider, as she's talking about those, consider shipping, taxes, and even promos in your pricing model so that you develop a pricing model that works regularly and then can be accommodating towards you wanting to give free shipping from time to time, or again, charging taxes in different states. So keep that in mind while you're thinking about the pricing models.
All right, now that we know we want to be consistent on the web, we have to figure out, okay, what am I going to price my products with?
Sure.
So the first and most common product pricing model is MSRP. That's taking the price the manufacturer is recommending and just using it across the board. This is a very simple, very traditional way to do product pricing, and some manufacturers do dictate that you have to advertise at the MSRP. You cannot advertise their products at a lower rate, and that's very common. The pros to MSRP pricing is you know what to do. You've got the price already set for you, and everybody's consistent. The con to that is you know the price, so does everybody else, and everybody's consistent.
Yep.
So unless your search engine optimization is outstanding and you can get everybody to your site so they buy from you rather than your competitor, that's really your only differentiator. So that it's a way to go, but if you can be more competitive, definitely you want to be. The second is also a very traditional pricing model. It's called keystone pricing. This is very, very common for manufacturers if you're going to be selling online. That's taking the cost of the product, what it took you as the manufacturer to build the product, taking that price times 2 for your wholesale price, and then taking it times 2 again for your retail price. It's standard. It gives you a lot of margin on your product, so you definitely are going to be profitable. However, the downside to this is some of your products might not really justify that price increase. So you really have to look at it strategically on whether or not the value of your product is justifying that type of price model.
So you can still go with that model. There just could be exceptions to the rule.
Absolutely. The third one on this slide is penetration product pricing. What penetration product pricing does is it introduces a new product or a service to customers at a lower introductory price. So you see this a lot in the automotive industry or in services like cell phones or cable, where you come in and you know you're going to get this lower price for a set period of time, or this product's going to be available for that lower price for a set period of time. And then when that time limit expires, the price is going to go up. The keys to that are being very transparent, making sure customers know that there is going to be that price increase. The pros to the penetration pricing is it does increase hype. People are excited. They're going to get a good deal. They want to buy from you. Where the con is feeling that bait and switch, or you missed the deadline, so you didn't get in on that price, and so you're sort of bitter about that. It also does not foster customer loyalty. They know they've got a set period of time, and after that time, your price is going to go up, so they're going to go look elsewhere. They're going to go find that product or a similar product at a more competitive price. All right. Anchor pricing. You see this a lot with big box retailers where they show you the list price that everyone else is selling at. But they show that crossed out and show you the amazing price that you're going to get from them, that big discount. Look what you're saving. The pro to that is, again, it brings hype. It makes people feel good. People are excited when they see that discount. The con to that is oftentimes those list prices are inflated. Nobody's really selling the product at that price, and a savvy consumer can go find that information, or really making people feel like you're kind of the bargain basement. Why are your prices cheaper? So it doesn't foster as much loyalty. you're a place people go when they're looking for competitive pricing, but they're really going to be bargain shoppers. That's not really the customer you want. The customer you want is the customer who's going to come to you because your service and your product are good and they're willing to pay your prices. So again, it's a popular one for the big box stores, not always really competitive for some of the smaller companies. Another pricing model is loss leader. This is more of a promotional way to price, where you take a larger product or a more expensive product and offer it a really, really low price, but that product either requires or frequently needs an accessory product or other complementary products. Those products are then offered side by side at their full price. So you can see from the example on the screen, you're looking at a really competitive price for that printer. But as everybody knows, printer cartridges don't last very long. And that printer cartridge is expensive. And you're going to have to keep buying it over and over and over again. So that retailer is making all their money off that cartridge. So you come in thinking you're getting a great deal. You walk out the door having spent more money than you expected. The third is really discount pricing. That is offering promotions, free shipping, percentage discounts, things like that. This is a really great way to get customers to your site and have them keep coming back. What you want to make sure is that you're not constantly running discounts all the time. This pricing model is get the customer in, that loyal customer who knows your company and feels comfortable buying from you, and you're going to reward that loyalty by giving them targeted, meaningful discounts at really great times. So discount pricing is awesome. Just make sure you're using it strategically and judiciously.
Great, makes sense. So let's talk about scalability and maintenance, because while we'd like to think a lot of the work is done when we launch our e-commerce site, there's a lot of things to think about after you do that as well. But in relation to the data that we've been talking about today, let's talk about scalability and maintenance. So again, it's a lot of work to get all the data ready. It's a lot of work to think about how you want to price items. It's a lot of thinking about choices. Do I care that I haven't integrated my e-commerce system with this backend system? Can I live with there being some manual steps in the process to some degree? And some of those are fine, and some of those are necessary. That if you waited until everything was in your favor and all these things were done, you might never launch your e-commerce site. So you have to make choices. That said, can you live with those choices if you launch your e-commerce site and sales are now at 10 times what they were before you launched, or 10 times what they were last year? Do some of those processes become prohibitive? So you want to think about that, and you want to think about what your next steps will be. So play out some scenarios before you launch of what if sales are about what they are today? What if they are 10 times, 100 times what we expect? And at least have some plans, metrics in place, and decision points at which you're going to say, okay, now we need to automate this step, or now we need to add another customer service person, or now we need to do whatever. And these are great problems to have. If your sales volume is 10x what it was a year ago, you wouldn't refuse that. Of course, you want that to be the case. You just want to be prepared for it and know what choices you make before they happen. So speaking to the maintenance aspect of that, again, I talked about data and integration all the way through this webinar. What are those processes on an ongoing basis? Again, it might be that you only need a one-time data dump about certain information from certain suppliers or from other systems within your organization, or it might be that there's data around concepts such as inventory or pricing, like I said, that needs to be updated and closer to real time. So make sure you understand what the ongoing nature of those integrations are, as well as the upfront. And as I said before, you may not be able to get all the things you want in place by the time you launch your phase 1 e-commerce site. So what were the things on that phase 2 list? What is your plan? What are the decision points to go forward with those options? So let's say you weren't able to do all the attributing, that Allison described. What information are you going to need to see on the website of seeing where customers get to and where they drop off before you say, okay, we should start that attributing process? Or do we have a process to attribute, 10% of the products every month for the next year and work towards the goal of getting that all done? What does the phase 2 and 3 look like as you evolve? What system updates could affect your e-commerce system? So again, the more your e-commerce system ties in with other systems within your organization or third-party organizations, What if you do an accounting system upgrade? What if you do upgrade your ERP system? What benefits and what problems can that potentially cause? Any place where there's a data dependency, you need to think about and put that into your kind of critical systems document and know that if other people in the organization are making decisions, that they could affect your e-commerce performance. And are you ready to react to customer behavior? So, while we think we're pretty good at e-commerce and a lot of our clients are very smart people, there are still surprises that happen. So you put up an e-commerce site and we really thought people would enjoy exploring this way or that way, and we see that nope, 80% of them are going down this path. It was just no way to predict that. Now, do you kind of fight City Hall and continue with the way you wanted to do it, or do you listen to the data that you're seeing in Google Analytics and your e-commerce system and say, okay, the data is telling us that people like to shop in this way, so now let's change it. Now, again, be careful. As in all of life, the complainers are going to be louder than the people who enjoy the experience. So again, I encourage you to look at Google Analytics, listen to your partners, and look at your e-commerce system statistics. If one person had a problem shopping today and 999 checked out just fine, and your conversion percentages from visitors to shoppers is within industry statistics that we pointed out at the start of this webinar, don't adjust the whole site for the one complainer. But if your complainers are reaching 5%, 10% of the shoppers, it's something you want to start thinking about and adjusting for, and maybe creating an alternate path as opposed to, again, replacing the mainline way in which people shop. But regardless, do listen to your customers. There's never been a better medium for being able to directly see not just what customers would tell you in a survey, but what they actually do, because you have the data to back that up. So those are some big concepts, and some of those are going to take some time to implement. We always like to end our webinars with something you can do in the next 30 days to get started and kind of get you out of that deer in headlights mode and take some action. So what we want you to do is, whether you have a site today or you don't, I want you to think about developing that product taxonomy that Allison talked about. So if you have a site today, you could look at how you have your products organized on the site today, write those on a whiteboard and start there. If you don't, you could pull out your product catalog, your other marketing literature, or however else you communicate your products to your customers, and you can write that on the board and explain how that is organized today. And then put some thought into, if you were organizing it for a proper e-commerce site based on some of the things we've talked about today, how would you lay it out? We mentioned shopping by category, shopping by brand, shopping by usage. Think about all those things. And again, as Allison said, it's possible to have multiple avenues within your product taxonomy to get to, and your navigation on the site to get to those products. So try doing that yourself. Try doing that with a smaller group of people, 2 to 3 people that might be on your team. I would be very excited and would love to have you as a client. If 2 or 3 of you do this and don't have any fights and it all goes perfectly and you organize this within an hour, give me a call immediately. We'd love to work with you. But that said, that's not usually how it goes. Usually you get a few people together and they're going to have differences in opinion about how the product should be organized. People are going to feel like, why isn't my thing highlighted? There's going to be a lot of those types of discussions. Some of these are going to be politically based. Some are going to be, again, technologically based of, oh, how do we get that information to support this kind of categorization? But try this exercise. Try putting those categories up on the board and see, that it is a little bit of a challenge, and see what thoughts it starts for you, because going through that process, again, you probably won't be right the first time, but going through the process helps you think about it. And then the last step I would say for this exercise is then show it to a potential customer, show it to somebody outside the organization, and you may be surprised, but I'm pretty sure they're going to say something that you didn't think of in the first time you tried to lay it out, and it may send you back to the drawing board completely. But go through that exercise and see where you get. I think the results will be interesting for you. So in summary, we've talked about a lot of work today, and it is supporting an e-commerce site, getting all the data that supports it is a big job. But e-commerce is still a great opportunity. And again, just think about it that way. If you're willing to do the work to create a great e-commerce site with this kind of data that supports advanced shopping via search and good product taxonomy, the person next to you in that organization, a different organization down the street, may not be willing to put that work in, and that's why you're going to succeed. But you do need to find a lot of data to support your e-commerce efforts. That data is not likely existent in all places, or maybe trapped in too many places or in third-party systems that you have to get to. Developing your product taxonomy is that relationship between products and categories that Allison described. Quality of search combines relevance, performance, and creates a great customer experience. Pricing can get complicated. As we talked about, you're trying to take pricing models you've had offline and bring them off online. We talked a little bit about why those should be different. You want to try to simplify it for e-commerce, and remember that transparency is a big deal, and work towards pricing that would make sense if you had to explain your pricing to all tiers of customers. Be ready to scale for success and put in the work to maintain your data based on customer feedback, because you will certainly get some. And as always, be excited about the low risk for big reward in e-commerce. There's just never been this opportunity in our lifetime anyway to get your products and your company to the entire world in a scalable and efficient and affordable way. If you think about how we had to do business and the risks you had to take to expand a local business to a regional or national or worldwide entity in the 1950s, 70s, et cetera, man, it was a lot harder. You can certainly experiment and fail fast, succeed big, all those things in the e-commerce space a lot easier than it used to be. So, again, put in the work, but enjoy the success as well. So with that, that's what we wanted to cover today. Let's see if we have any questions. Brittany, do we have any questions from the group?
I do. I have a couple questions. First one is, what's a typical timeline for getting your data ready to support e-commerce?
A typical timeline is anywhere from 3 to 6 months, depending on where you're starting. If you've got your data already in a catalog or an existing e-commerce platform that you're looking to move to a new platform or to grow, that's a great place to start, and you already have some of the groundwork. If you're starting from scratch, or you're looking to expand your product line, so you're bringing in maybe new manufacturer, new lines, and looking at what's not working with your current data, this can be a more labor-intensive process. So I would say, really do budget closer to the 6-month mark, but understanding that if you've got some work already done, it might be closer to 3. But that's a pretty standard timeline for getting the product data ready. Yeah,
and I think one thing, that doesn't mean necessarily that's a full-time job for somebody in an organization doing that, but I do think counterbalancing that, when we work with organizations, we make sure there is at least, there's multiple key stakeholders for a variety of things, but make sure there is somebody really owning that data process and gathering that you can't have that pushed to, the back burner. That, we can certainly be doing some development on the e-commerce site while that data is being gathered and other tasks, but that data process is going to be key, in gathering all that data, knowing what you're even going to have a few months before launch, so that we can turn on or off certain features if the data is or isn't there, is super important. So it needs to be a priority task for somebody in your organization. Again, not maybe a full-time job, but is a certain amount of hours per week, probably for, like Allison said, that 3 to 6 month time period.
All right, thank you. One other question for
Okay.
you. How do I really know if my on-site search is working?
Oh, okay. So we mentioned it briefly, but I think that wasn't our focus today as much as some of the other things, so we didn't probably go into it as much as we could have. There's so this is a thing we really like to do. When you look at Google search, there's a lot of feedback that comes from Google Analytics, but of course what you don't get from Google Analytics is what people searched that didn't result in them coming to your website. You know what did, but you don't know what didn't get them there. Well, in on-site search, if you're capturing what people are typing into your on-site search, then you can look at that list and say, okay, that's interesting, and you can learn a lot about the voice of the customer. As Alice and I both mentioned, we have clients that will swear up and down that their customers don't know part numbers. They call it this. They would never use this layman term or this professional term or whatever else. And they're inevitably incorrect. Some of the terms that really surprise our clients are in the top 10 words used on the on-site search. So it's good to know that, learn the voice of your customer, and then use that in other marketing mediums even. But then what you can really look at is, if you can track not only what word was searched on, but what results came back, then you can go, oh, okay, so they typed in clutch and 220 products came back. Does 220 feel right to you? Is that how many things should have come back when somebody typed that in? If you're like, well, no, that should have been 2,000, then you need to look at why that is, and you need to end up adding, you know, keywords to hidden keyword fields, or you need to recategorize your products in some way, or the search might just be broken. You know, if the product is called clutch or the category is clutch and it's not coming back, the search may not be working or may not be searching the category field. So you should be able to know that. And one of the things we really encourage people to look at is a zero search word report. So the idea that if somebody typed in clutch and it said 0 products were found, then you really want to hone in on that and figure out what's going on. If you sell clutches, of course. If you don't, maybe not a big concern, or you might think to yourself, maybe we should sell that product if it matches. But we've seen, you know, as Allison said, misspellings should be caught by your search engine tools. But if you don't have a sophisticated search engine tool, it may not catch a misspelling, but then you could load that misspelling into a hidden keywords field, and then it would be a match tomorrow. So yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing you can do is just capture what people are searching in the box, and then ideally knowing how many returns came back in the results, and then adapting, you know, based on what you find, like I just described. So yeah, it's a great question, and it's one of the most popular reports for a lot of our clients is seeing when somebody searched and nothing came back, and then they can go and easily fix it for the next time.
And that's it for questions.
All right, great. Well, a couple things I want to share. We have written a book before on e-commerce and digital marketing, and we have a new book that's coming out on October 1st. So for those of you that are on the webinar today, if you would like to email me at mbird@spindustry.com, I'll get you a free ebook copy of that as soon as they're ready, October 1st. So you can read about some of the topics we did today, as well as other topics. And if that results in any questions you have or suggestions you have for us for additional webinars we can do, certainly email me at that same address, and we'll you know, develop that content accordingly. And beyond that, you know, thank you for being on today. And this is my contact information. I won't let you bother Allison. She's got a lot of work to do, but I'll let you talk to her if you really want to. But you can reach me at this phone number, email address. You can follow me on Twitter. The @Spindustry account gives you a lot of great e-commerce information, as does the Iowa Birdman account, in addition to some great Star Wars information. So follow me there, and we will be having additional webinars on e-commerce going forward. And Brittany, you want to close us out?
Sure. Again, thank you everyone for joining today. You'll be receiving the recording and the slide deck shortly, and we hope to see you at our next webinar.
Bye, everybody.